to understand. Long I'm meant to understand.
Do you guys remember that it was like the technology behind this weapon was just unbelievable. Like nobody could figure this thing out. And it floated all the way from China down through Alberta, down like from Canada, going all the way down through Alberta and going across into the States.
The balloon?
Yeah, that ancient technology that nobody knew. It's like, well, don't shoot it down. It could destroy America. Like everybody was panicked, and they just left it for days until it went over. I think, I don't know if it was the Gulf or somewhere where they finally shot it down. And I'm like, how in the world we are so advanced? Like we want to go to Mars, live underground for hundreds of years so that we can live above the ground and have, I don't know, a desert region, I guess. But anyways, and yet you have these little balloons that come across and we don't even know anything about it. We're just like, well, this is kind of weird. And what's eerie about it is in World War II, Japan was sending these same type of balloons over to America from the Pacific. And what they would do is they would have bombs on them. And some of them didn't work, or most of them didn't work, because by the time they got to the land, the balloons just ran out of helium or whatever, and they just dropped in the woods. And there was one time, I forget the name of the family. They went to church. They came out of church. They went on a picnic, and their kids went off into the woods to play, and they accidentally detonated a bomb. This was like in the 50s or 60s. So there are tons, shouldn't say tons, how about dozens of bombs that are on American soil from Japan because they were trying something. They're trying to use the weather patterns to bring over these balloons. And then here you go, a couple of years ago, you see China doing the same thing with these weather balloons. I think, man, if you're talking about chemical warfare and you want to change our atmosphere, you send those balloons over, we couldn't touch them. We have no technology. What, are you going to start shooting them down above communities? You're not. So we're kind of held hostage if these balloons start showing up over our airspace. There's nothing we can do about it. And if we shoot them, all of a sudden you got chemicals. Like it's a conspiracy. I'm making this stuff up as the black swan, but I have to look outside and go, what happens if there are other parties that are trying to do this kind of stuff to America, to Canada, because we're going to get hit first, then you guys. And what happened? Like we are so vulnerable because of this winter storm right now. We are. Like, you shut the power off, Derek's gone.
Yep.
He's back to the wood stove. Like, that's how vulnerable we are. My lights can go out and I wouldn't know what to do. We're so used to electricity.
And that's what's so unnatural too. That's what I started out the show about, being unnatural, because when I moved here, it was 16 years ago in 2010. I did build my house, for, if power goes out, I like to be self-sufficient. I've got a wood stove in my house and a fireplace. So I've got two sources of heat with which I can heat with firewood. And I'm going to tell you, if it goes down in the 30s or the 20s, which would be kind of typical for this area, it's okay. I mean, my house, I could keep it a toasty 80 degrees if I wanted to, just with wood. When it goes down to these crazy single-digit temperatures, we're just not built for that down here. We're not, nothing's insulated for that. Nothing is, we're just, it's unnatural. And, if my power goes out, I'll struggle. I won't freeze, but I'll struggle.
Mm-hmm. I think they said 1850s was the last time it was that cold, or this cold, according to the records. Middle of the 1800s. All right. That is a long time ago.
Yep.
All right. Wow. And, plus you're talking about those balloons, Shane. There's a whole bunch of, now that flew over during Biden. So Biden is a piece of crap. They're trying to hand the United States over to a globalist platform. and they basically wanted the entire world to take over America. That's what they want. They want globalism. That's what Democrats are. They're a globalist party. So anything is globalist. Get the illegals in here and all that stuff. Okay, so just understand that. Send the money out to all the world, and don't keep anything here for us. Globalism. All right. So with that being said, when that balloon flew over, could have been a China balloon, basically, and it went over nuclear installations.
Oh, for sure.
So it was scanning. So it could have been a Chinese balloon scanning all of our nuclear installation, our grid, and all stuff like that. One. Two, it could have been a balloon sent by our own government scanning for stuff to take down our grid and points where they could be systematic about taking down our grid, attack points and stuff like that, and people gathering, and it's all a bunch of weird stuff. Okay. But here's another one people probably never thought about, and this is me just speculating, okay, going Black Swanee, right?
Okay, you're on the right channel for this.
What if this was an atmospheric weather mechanism doing atmospheric reconnaissance for the Nephilim that are in the earth?
Wow.
And this thing is going over and checking out if they're taking readings, doing everything. And it's just nobody wanted to shoot it down.
Yeah.
So it could have been something as crazy as that.
Well,
right.
If we're talking about preemptive programming like movies, predictive
program, yeah.
There's a movie called The Man of Steel by Henry Cavill, starring Henry Cavill, and in it, General Zod tries to convert the Earth over so that they can breathe properly. And so when they got there, they all wear masks, and that kind of reminds me a little bit of Nephilim in some ways. They were trying to extract the DNA, the codex, if you will, from Kal-El. Shows you how much of a Superman nerd I am. But they wanted to extract the codex from Kal-El, and it didn't matter if he was live or dead. And they wanted to terraform the Earth so that the Kryptonians can inhabit it. That to me is predictive programming 101.
Sure.
Yep.
That's the thing. Remember the Nephilim too, when they walked this earth, they had a lot more oxygen. It was a lot more oxygen dense up here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The atmosphere is not conducive for them to live up here right now. They're used to that type of oxygen. They'll suffocate up here.
Wow.
So you have to think about that. So how are they going to be able to create an oxygen rich environment? And speaking of which, this is actually not a rabbit hole, but it's really interesting. Is you guys like seen those mountains that are like they look like huge, gigantic tree stumps that have been cut flat.
Now you got my attention.
Yeah, like Devil's Tower. They're all over the world,
and
they're cut flat. They're level. You put a level on this thing, and they were just cut flat. And it's not erosion. Okay, so basically, what these were giant trees that existed on the earth during Noah's time, which was a very important mechanism for oxygen like our trees today. But the trees were a lot bigger, which allowed greater amounts of oxygen to be in the air. So God said, well, these Nephilim need a great amount of oxygen, so let's cut the trees down. Okay, cut the trees down. That way they can't breathe the air. The oxygen will drop greatly, so they'll suffocate. Even if they survive the flood, they'll suffocate or have to go inside the earth. Either way, they cannot stay up here. One.
And two, they couldn't climb to the top of the trees to escape the flood. Look, these trees made the atmosphere extremely rich in oxygen because they were so big. The bigger the trees, the more the oxygen you have on the earth. And in an environment like that, people lived a lot longer.
That explains why a lot of humans think that Adam and Eve were a lot bigger at the time. And they lived to be 900 years old because it was so oxygen rich because of the gigantic trees that went to the heavens.
Yeah.
And it's actually in the book of Enoch
that says where God gave the command for the angels to go cut down these trees. And it's in Enoch chapter 66 where it says, and in those days, the word of the Lord came to me and said, Noah, behold,
thy lot
has ascended up to me, a lot void of crime, a lot beloved and upright. Now then, shall the angels labor all the trees, but when they proceed to do this, I will put my hand upon it and preserve it. So what happened? The angels labored the trees, cut them flat. Okay, it's probably an archangel with a huge sword, whatever.
Yeah.
But his hand preserved them, so that way they'll stay preserved and they're petrified. so that way we could see them.
That's interesting. Like in the book of Enoch.
In the book of
Yeah.
Enoch.
What's
Wow.
interesting about that, and then we'll jump to Mark, is I did a bit of a deep dive on this a few years ago. You might be surprised about giant trees. And when all the people were coming over from England, a lot of them were like lumberjacks by trade and all this kind of stuff. And the first thing that they did when they showed up to Canada and America on the coast was they cut down all the giant trees, and there was no purpose for it.
Wow.
To the normal person. There was like, to the lumberjacks, they're like, we don't know why we're cutting down these trees, but we have orders from the king or queen, whoever was in charge back then, to cut all these giant trees down. And then they would take photographs of them. And I'm not a tree hugger, but when you see these photographs, you see soulless men. There's like 40 of them in a row on the stumps, and it's black and white photos. It almost feels like you don't see any soul in them. And they cut these trees down, and these are not like your giant redwood trees. These are trees that are massive, like 10, 20 times bigger than the trees that you have that you drive cars through right now in
Wow.
California. These are huge trees, but they cut them all down, and then they ship them to England, and there's no use for them. Like, these trees are so massive, you don't use them for firewood. That's not what they're used for. So instead, what they did was they built restaurants on top of these tree trunks. They would ship them over, and they would make massive restaurants on top of them, and dance floors and all kinds of stuff in England to celebrate the cutting down of these trees. Then you got to ask yourself, like what Bob was just saying, maybe there's also a war against some of the principalities, powers, rulers with some of the people, human war against Nephilim and all this stuff that's going on behind closed doors, where they're making deals behind the scenes. They're doing all kinds of stuff. And we're like, yeah, I guess that makes sense to chop down a 2,000, 3,000-year-old tree and have no use for it and just cut it down. Like, it feels weird that they're doing something unbeknownst to us, and maybe that's humans fighting back to try and eliminate some of these future giants that are going to show up once again. I don't know.
Shane, I think there's something more to it. I think Tree of Life. I think I'm in real estate, and I had a few people in my town. People in Europe wanted they were all trees from our state, and they wanted those trees. I'm thinking that these trees that these guys took down, that wood was sent over there, and there's energy there's something out of it. I don't know what, but there's something that came out of it, and it energizes them. Just like we know that, I'll have to say the blood word, but the blood, the people drink that because it energizes them and gives them new life. Well, I bet you those trees, and don't forget, everything goes back to the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. It goes back to Eden, right? He shall not surely die. Everything goes back to those trees. So this is another symbol of trees.
Another thing too is they have some predictive programming going on about these big trees. If you just watched Avatar, first one, remember that?
Yep.
And they blew that big giant. It's like a big tree that they were all living in. All the Nephilim blue beings living in this huge tree.
Yeah.
And when they blew up that tree came from. It took a long time. They made it so sad. And I was like, man, what's that all about? You know, I just started thinking, okay, what's the programming here?
Yeah.
Cutting down a gigantic tree. Is the whole green thing?
Yeah, but here in the movie, it is where these Nephilim beings lived.
Yep.
And it was sad as can be.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably some predictive programs that, hey, start respecting these big trees.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And because we got these Nephilim beings coming or returning.
Yep.
All right. So they're kind of creating a heartfelt position for people to be in mentally when these guys show up.
Yeah.
Okay. Through that predictive programming as well. You know, the other thing too, I'll make a quick mention about these trees that they're still here at the book of Enoch. I just showed you chapter 66. God said, I will preserve them. Why is God preserving them? My theory is he's going to bring those trees back because we'll need that type of oxygen environment back for the millennial reign for you to live 1,000 years. So he's preserving those trees. And I've seen these tree stumps come back. They start growing another tree right up, a little branch comes up from that. So I think God has preserved these gigantic, like Devil's Tower and all that stuff, those gigantic trees. He's going to bring them all back. Well, and probably pretty quick.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to sit there and wait 500 years to grow. I think it's going to be like he'll walk there. Hey, look at that. You bring it back up. Yeah.
There is a verse, and I think it's in Job, where it talks about what you just talked about right now, about the idea that it doesn't matter if a tree is cut off. As soon as it gets the scent that there's water nearby, it starts to be attracted, whether that's branches growing out to find the water or whatever it is, and then it sprouts. You just give it water and it'll grow back. It's not dead forever. That's the interesting thing about tree trunks and all this kind of stuff. They'll lie dormant. You give it the right soil, the right water, the right atmosphere, whatever, they'll spring back to life. It's actually quite amazing.
So that's probably why they're still there. And that's why God preserved them. Not just for history, for us to understand about what happened, but to also bring them back. So that way we'll have an oxygen-rich environment for the millennial reign. And the thing is, what's going to happen during the tribulation, water, things changing. Whatever's going to happen is going to be bad for people, but it's going to be good for the earth. Because what happens to the third crust of the earth? Everything gets burned.
Yeah.
Right?
Burning is actually good in the long run.
Yeah, for forest. It's supposed to regenerate a forest.
Yeah, you regenerate it by burning it.
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
So it's like a 2-in-1. It's a 2-in-1 for God. I could burn everything, kill everything that doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I could regenerate the entire Western nations and bring everything back and reactivate these trees with new nutrients in the ground and everything.
Yeah.
And besides, I think that's a great idea because look, you know how much crap is in our grounds now?
Yeah.
Thanks to the chemtrails,
radon,
all that stuff's in the ground. It has to be burned away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feed my sheep.
Family, it looks like 2025 may be the year that we are out of here. Have you thought about all the work that you have accomplished to build God's kingdom throughout the time that you've been saved here on the earth? If you feel like you have not finished strong enough for the Lord, you need to listen up. As the body of Christ, it is our job to share the gospel, add new members to the body of Christ through this process, and after they are saved, we're supposed to educate them, encourage them, and provide any help that they need. So let's first talk about sharing the gospel. Think back since you've been saved and how many people you've reached with the gospel. Now think how many people you would like to reach with the gospel. How good of a day do you want to have at the judgment seat of Christ after the rapture? Evidently, the more people you reach, the better that day is going to be. And Feed My Sheep Today is your #1 way to get that done. Let me explain. For over 13 years, Feed My Sheep Today has been building the world's largest network of Christian missionaries sharing the gospel of grace all around the world. This is the bulk of what we do outside of taking care of orphanages, medical aid to believers. We're building water wells, providing food, blankets, and other humanitarian relief aid. We have pantries set up that feeds the homeless here in the United States and all around the world. And they are preaching the word at these pantries as they are passing out the food. Feed My Sheep Today does all this and much, much more to ultimately build the body of Christ and sustain the body of Christ with their needs until the rapture resurrection. Are you ready to finish strong for the Lord? Do you feel that slight pull in your spirit right now to make your impact here? Please don't ignore it. That's the Holy Spirit telling you, hey, we need you here right now. Feed My Sheep Today is here to help you reach the lost. People's lives are being impacted all over the world, and we are playing a massive role of helping new believers board the Ark of Jesus Christ. Thanks to your support. Family, we can't take our money with us, but we can surely invest it in the right place to build God's kingdom, so that way the heavenly rewards that are created from it will follow you and your family forever and ever. Are you ready to make your impact today? All you have to do is go to our official website. It's feedmysheeptoday.org. Link is in the description box below. There you can give by credit card, PayPal, bank draft, and many other online options as well, like Google Pay and more. Or if you don't want to mess with any of this, all you have to do is just pick up your smartphone and text sheep to 801-801, and you can very easily give right there. Don't like giving online? No problem. Send your support by mail to Feed My Sheep Today, P.O. Box 568, Schererville, Indiana 46375. Want to make a big impact but don't have the money to do it right now? Just become an Easy Feed monthly sustainer. We greatly need monthly sustainers. This allows Feed My Sheep Today to plan for next month by making solid commitments to the leadership in these areas that we will be visiting, because we know that the funds will be there at this point next month to take care of their needs. Plus, it's easier for you. Just set it and forget it. And this frees you up to do other things for the Lord while this is working on automatic on your behalf. And you can easily make changes at any time. And make sure to track your investment by following all of our other social media platforms. Links are in the description box below. Feed My Sheep Today is ready to partner with you to make your impact in God's kingdom today. Thank you all so much for the many years of support. Let's finish strong together, and may God bless you all.
Another interesting thing, since we're talking about the earth and stuff like that, is somebody made a really good point, and I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't help but say to myself, you know what, that's a good point. It's when we bombed Japan
with nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in 1945, about 81 years ago. If this really happened, if they really got bombed with a nuclear weapon, then we have a problem, because
how long does nuclear fallout last? You can't live there. Isn't it like 100, 200 years? Something like that?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make sense, because there have been people who have been living there ever since, and they completely rebuilt these areas, and now they're even tourist attractions. So evidently there is really no nuclear fallout here. And then there was this hospital that was supposedly right at ground zero that is somehow miraculously still standing after a nuclear blast that people take pictures in front of now.
Thing is, like, hold on a second. I always thought that you would drop bombs there. It's a nuclear fallout. Why are people living there?
Yeah,
and
no,
things are normal.
It's better.
People never thought about that. I'm like, why is this hospital that was right at the ground zero point, and it should have got blown to bits down to this foundation, still standing? And so they think we never nuked them. We just firebombed the crap out of them. We never used nukes. It was said we used nukes, but we never used nukes.
No.
Ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Nukes had never been used on the population. And I'm starting to believe that because there's no fallout.
Yep.
We just firebombed the crap out of them. That's all we did.
Yes, exactly. And that's, you know, you can go down that conspiracy rabbit hole, but there is something to that because they are 100% back. There were reports that there were buildings that were intact, and then across the street, there were buildings on fire. And there are different regions where people were untouched, but yet this whole neighborhood went down, like in fire. And now if you see pictures of the place, there are beautiful trees everywhere along both sides of the river and everything, and it's like flourishing.
Hey, you make you wonder what happened to Lahaina? What happened to LA? Did they use that weapon there?
Well, this is where too. Here's like a little contrarian point of view to add into the mix. Let's just take the assumption that all the nuclear stuff was nuclear. That Hiroshima and Nagasaki were nuclear. Fukushima, Chernobyl, everything that we're talking about. Okay,
yep.
Let's just take it at face value. Okay, what are they basing their projections upon as to when human life can take place? They're basing it upon radioactive isotopes and the lifespan of a radioactive isotope, which they estimate. They're like, okay, you can't inhabit this for 200 years. But you're talking to the same people that carbon date this earth 2, 3, 4, 10 billion years old. The fact is they don't know. And my way of looking at some of these situations is I think the earth is a whole lot more resilient than we give it credit for. I think that God has made this planet to heal itself. I mean, look at just years ago, they were talking about the hole in the ozone layer. Guess what? It's healed itself. The ozone layer is not an issue anymore. God has made this world really, really resilient. I think even from nuclear fallout and stuff like that. And we just don't know because it's kind of uncharted territory. You drop a nuclear bomb and you say, oh man, all this radioactive stuff, yeah, it's going to be awful. It's going to be destruction, but it may not be 200 years before, it might be 20 years or 40 years before it starts to become habitable because again, God's the creator. And sometimes I think we don't give him enough credit for his creation.
I agree with you on that. But if I may also throw out there, obviously we know that that Satan is the, author of confusion.
Yep.
So what if all of that, and of course, again, just throwing this out there to you, what if the ozone layer thing was just a gimmick or a lie to scare people into submission? Just like we know the thing back a couple years ago was to scare people into submission as well.
Yeah, well, even if you think about 1999,
like what if the ozone layer never did?
Right.
Like, yeah. It was never.
You don't know what to believe. That's the thing.
I don't know. Right.
Yeah, you don't know what to believe. And I mean, it's like my daughter was talking to me the other day about some new weapon. I don't even know. She gave me the name and I didn't do any research on this, but apparently Trump announced some new weapon that the Americans have called the discombobulator. Has anybody heard of the discombobulator? I mean, what a great name, the discombobulator.
That's awesome.
But there's supposedly some new weapons that they use to take Maduro out and all this other stuff. And my daughter says, well, why would they tell us about that? I said, listen, whatever they're telling you about means they've got something else they're not telling you about. Anything. It's like, if you remember back in, I think it was in the 80s when they released, who remembers the SR-71 Blackbird? One of my favorite planes of all time. Fantastic plane. They started releasing the technology of the SR-71 Blackbird. This is an amazing plane. Goes subsonic and the whole thing. And it's like, okay, so they're letting the cat out of the bag now. That just means they've got stuff up there in the sky that they're not going to tell you about. If they're letting you know about the SR-71, it just means they've got something that's light years advanced beyond that, that they're not telling you about. So,
yeah,
exactly. I 1,000% agree with you. They're going to confuse people, or like the scriptures say, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing.
That's
kind
right.
Of thing.
That's right.
Exactly what they're doing. They're over here with their nonsense, and they're actually over here doing things, trying to keep you focused over. And that was the purpose of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Of course.
All of the other stuff, politics, everything.
We like to think we're more sophisticated and more secure. But when you think about not so long ago, maybe Mark can't remember this, maybe Bob can't remember, Dorothea, but maybe Derek can remember this. Remember in 1999 when they had the Y2K scare?
Yes.
I can't tell you how many magazines I bought that were saying things like the elevator's going to stop, your car's going to stop with your combustion engine.
No computers.
No computers, because you can't change it to 00 and all.
I'm not going to lie, I was prepping for that thing. I was a little bit afraid of Y2K.
Most people were. And I remember working in a facility where they would hire people to come in to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking them, not that I was a nerd, but I was asking them, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, we're just putting some patches in and we're just downloading some software that we have, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to fix this stuff better. I'm like, okay, kind of sounds like to me you're doing nothing, but okay, whatever. And then when 2000 came, it was like, see, we fixed it. I'm like, you didn't really do anything, did you? And that's what happened all over the world. People panicked. Planes are going to drop out. And we bought it hook, line, and sinker. I don't care who you were. You bought it. Don't lie to me.